Hello, Jake Humphrey.
Hello.
I am very happy that you're here on the podcast. And on the face of it, it looks like we come from very different worlds. You run many businesses, you're a sports presenter, broadcaster. We share a podcast convergence with your high performance podcast. And when I was thinking about you, I was thinking maybe actually if you look below the performance, what we both do isn't so different in the sense that you're very interested in how people kind of think about themselves and how that plays out in their lives.
Yeah.
And that seems to be part of a sort of core part of you in a way.
I think you're totally right, and you've, as you should do in your profession, you've read me like a book straight away. I think if you asked me to sum myself up, I would almost hate to say I'm a businessman or I'm a podcaster or I'm a TV presenter, because all those things actually feel quite restrictive. I think
Quite boxing, they box you in.
Yeah, I think so. I think what drives me now, I suppose, is two things: curiosity and exploration. So even just walking here now to your beautiful home, I'm looking at the street thinking, God, what would it be like when people were pulling up outside these houses in awesome carriages? And like I said to you, how many are still houses? And I've got a great love and interest in history, fascinated with architecture. I mean, on my walk here, actually, I was at Trafalgar Square, and I just heard a lady saying to a small group of 3 or 4 people, and it was in 1635. She was tried for the second time and found guilty, and immediately my ears prick up. And I found myself standing, pretending I was on my phone, but listening to this woman tell a story of a lady who was jailed for committing crimes in central London. And I guess I'm just interested, and I find it very strange when people are not interested in other people and the things around them, because like you've got all these lovely photos of your family here. It's all fascinating if you can be bothered to look at it and learn about it. And as I say to my children often, they're only little, they're 8 and 11. Only boring people get bored. Like, there's no excuse for boredom in my mind, because everything's fascinating and interesting.
And so the question I ask everyone is, what is a particular challenge you are facing or have faced? And in relation to sort of curiosity and exploring and kind of wanting to go on learning, I wonder if that's linked to where you have had challenges, where you kind of feel stumped, when you kind of feel stuck. Because is your energy from always looking kind of thing?
Yeah, I think the big challenge, I think, for me is just trying to get the balance right. If you spoke to my wife, she would say, it's great to explore and be curious and be interested, but does it have to be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? And as I got older, I think I've definitely calmed that side of me down. I think what's really interesting is if you actually look back, I was a deeply unremarkable young person, teenager, right up into my late teens. I wasn't very interested in exploration. I wasn't curious. Very much floated through life, Julia. It was just... middle family, middle success. Yeah, meandering, bags of love. And sometimes I feel bad when I talk about my upbringing like this, when I say it was normal, very ordinary. But I think brilliantly so.
Ordinary is lucky. I think ordinary is extraordinary.
Yeah, and I think that's rare. You might have seen in your research this idea of roots and wings, which my parents instilled in us, this idea that you can go and do anything, but we'll always be here for you. And I think of the 3, I probably grew the biggest wings, which is definitely a surprise, I think.
To them?
To my parents, yeah, I think so. But this idea of exploration has only really come to me in the last 5 or so years since I started doing high performance. Because previously I was not easily content, but I was content. Like, for me, when I was 21, to be a kids' TV presenter, like, that was wow.
CBBC.
How am I here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a kid from a village in Norfolk. So that was kind of, not only was it enough, but it was all encompassing just to survive in that world. 1-year contracts, very cutthroat. Always a new, exciting, younger presenter around the corner. And then Formula One was a sensory overload for me. I remember I went to watch a race, and it was the previous presenter, and it was in China, and I'd never been to a Grand Prix before, and I'd signed a deal to do the job. And I remember watching brilliant presenter called Steve Ryder. He had a whole full grandstand there and the cars whipping around, and it was him and one floor manager, one monitor, and his pundit, his expert. And he's standing in this busy pit lane, and I genuinely just thought, well, I can't do that. That's the level beyond my capabilities. So then that became all consuming to try and do that job well. And then I left to join BT Sport, And I think for the first 5 years I felt the same. And then I don't know what changed, but something changed. And I no longer wanted to be defined as a TV presenter. And if you'd have said to me 10 years ago, what are you? I said, oh my goodness, I'm a TV presenter. And all my self-worth is wrapped up in that. It's very nice that it isn't now.
Because in a way, so there's this psychological pattern, which is when you're first learning, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Then in the next stage is you begin to know what you don't know, and that's incredibly frustrating. But you know what you don't know. And then as you're learning, you slowly kind of get some agency, you learn it, and then till finally you kind of feel, right, I've really got a handle on this.
Yeah.
I can do this. And it almost seems like the pattern in you, once you've got a handle on something, you kind of want to put it to one side and go to the next. And this may be too therapy speak, but I would say there's a possibility of a direct link to your mum being a teacher.
Yeah. So interesting. I love it. I love it when we get to this sort of stuff. I think you're on the money. I think it's really easy, I think, to discount the impact of your parents when you're young. Oh, my dad's just a charity worker, my mum's just a teacher. Well, what was my mum all about? Lifelong learning.
What's the just in either of those? Those are big jobs.
It's
that
true.
Change people's lives.
But when you're 13 or 14,
I want to say, for fuck's sake, those are the big jobs.
They are the big jobs. But I suppose I'm trying to say, when you're 13, you're like, my dad's not a professional footballer or an astronaut. You know, like, it doesn't seem very exciting when you're 13, but only
hasn't
now.
Just bought a green MG that you did at 21.
Yes, that was joyful. That's still the most exciting thing I've ever done, buying my green MG. I remember that.
Don't let your wife hear you say that, because she will want it to be.
It's true.
When you had babies or asked her to marry you.
And that as well. But I think, and if you look at the way I live now, the idea of lifelong learning, my mum was a teacher, the idea of constantly wanting to give back or share or creating the high performance foundation as we have, I absolutely can link that to my dad. And this sense of values and the carbon footprint, I guess, that you leave behind. Is it going to be a positive one or a negative one? Yeah.
And that sort of makes sense for how you're living in your internal world and your external world. Because when I was looking at your high performance podcast and this sort of achieving mindset, that you certainly have it as the driving you, but you also have this counterbalance, which is that family matters, trying to find a balance. I don't know if we ever do find a balance, actually. But there's a possibility for balance, maybe, if we try for it. But I have a sense of disquiet in achievement and success equaling happiness, which all the research shows that it doesn't. Because there's this idea of the hedonic principle, which is we always regulate as human beings. You know, if you're a heroin addict, you get your first hit of heroin and it sends all your transmitters in fireworks and it's fantastic. And then after a few weeks, you need another bigger hit because our body metabolizes it, has homeostasis. So you need more and more for everything. And so that is true for success.
Yeah.
So one of the things that can happen in success, you can aim in your life to be a champion at Wimbledon, win the Formula One, be a great businessman. And once you've hit your first million, that pleasure of it will last maybe a few days, maybe a few weeks. And then you drop that back down to your homeostatic, your natural place of happiness. And so my disquiet is this kind of chasing success, thinking it's going to do something for you internally.
So how do we make sure that the static version of us, the non-high performance, let's call it, version of us, how do we make sure that that is content so that if it all melted away tomorrow, I'd be okay? I
have a response to that, but I'm first of all interested in how you think you would react. So if something cataclysmic happened, all the businesses went under, you weren't presenting, you were left without a job. And I've thought about this in my life a lot, actually. How do you think you would deal with it?
I'm not sure. How can we know?
That's true, yeah.
But I think... So I suppose I think about the day that I ease off a bit is the day that something great happens. So Whisper is a really good example. There'll be a day when that business sells.
Tell people about Whisper.
So Whisper is a production company that I created with a guy called Sunil Patel, who's the current CEO. About 13 years ago, we were working in Formula One together. And I guess the whole exploration thing, I felt frustrated with the quality that people were producing content at, and that is probably my biggest struggle in life. I just think people's standards are so low all the time, and it frustrates the hell out of me. So I saw the standard of the work that was being done, and I said to Sunil, who was brilliant, by the way, why don't we set up a company to produce the kind of content that Formula One teams and sponsors in Formula One are employing to make their content, but we'll just do it way better. So we went to the teams who had huge budgets.
Who you already knew, so it was
we
a
already
natural
knew.
door opener.
Yeah, absolutely. But certainly very lucky in that sense.
And your wife worked with you, Harriet?
That's right, yeah. So Harriet was employee number one. She was a production manager, and she worked on Strictly Come Dancing and some really big, exciting light entertainment shows. And Sunil took a big gamble, gave up his job at BBC Sport, and we created Whisper. And then fast forward 13 years, we're based in Kew. We have just shy of 300 staff.
My God.
We are about to produce the Paralympics in Paris for Channel 4. We work for UEFA, doing huge amounts of work for them. We make the Wheel of Fortune with Graham Norton for ITV, and Jeopardy with Stephen Fry, and lots of shows. It's a really big, successful business, but was born, I guess, out of creativity and exploration. So I suppose part of me, I know that one day that business should and will sell. So I guess there's a bit of me that thinks, when that happens, how will I react? So I've got a friend who's been through that process, and I saw him this weekend. And I said, how's life? He goes, mate, my days are eating great food, reading great books, taking the kids to school and picking them up from school. And he's got a friend who's just been diagnosed with a terminal illness. And the guy said to me, you're the only person I know, Dan, who's got it nailed and understands what this life is about. But I also understand Dan's in a very rare, privileged position to be able to do that. I may well be in that position. I wonder how I'll react. I suspect I won't quite do what he does. So I suppose if it all melted around as in that position, I might be okay. If I lost everything and I started all right at the beginning again, I think that'd be really difficult for me. And there's no point saying otherwise. I know I came from nothing and this has all been built. But I definitely feel that you get to a point in your life where that status kind of matters to you. And I guess I'm probably in that place where I love the fact that people know I've built businesses and created a podcast. And I feel I know the secrets to building businesses now, so maybe I'd do that again. Or maybe it would be too painful and I would just, I don't know.
And I think that's a really honest answer that I think most people relate to, is that how we're seen by others does affect how we see ourselves. And that part of the driver, I mean, we're all wired for connection. And I think there's a big difference between being a people pleaser, which is sort of where you kind of change yourself in order to shape yourself to meet somebody else's approval.
Yeah.
And wanting people to move towards you with kind of to be attracted to you, to be pleased to see you, to be interested in you, to make a connection with you. And it feels to me like you're that side of the of the line. But also, I mean, what I guess your values from your parents, you also know, as long as you have a roof over your head and food on the table and your children were alive and well, that you'd be okay, that's at the bottom. And Harriet.
Yeah, I think so. I just guess you don't know. So much of my life is so exciting. Most days there's something really fun happening. How do I not know that all of my joy actually comes from that rather than other things? And I find that maybe I'm not such a happy dad or a happy husband or a happy friend if I haven't got those other things around me. It is a kind of scary thought, but quite a useful one, because I'm definitely aware of how transient stuff are. We're talking a few days after the death of Michael Mosley, fellow podcaster, incredible guy. And from what we know at the moment, it looks like a short episode that cost him his life. Like, you do have to live every day with the awareness of how fragile everything is, I think. Because I love the phrase memento mori, right? Remember, we're all dying.
Yeah. It's very Victorian.
Very. And people think it's negative. I think it's the most positive thing ever. There's a strong chance you and I never meet again, right?
Yeah.
How lovely but we could just throw this hour away. Or we could really enjoy it and connect, and you can learn from me, I can learn from you, and it just adds to the richness of our lives. I think that's all we can really do, the best we can in the moment we're in.
And I do think, I mean, I work a lot with people who are dying and with people who've had very close, significant people die. And, we are a kind of death aversion society.
Yeah.
And so I think you saying, knowing that you're going to die, knowing that you're mortal, that something could happen in a nanosecond, and that makes the present more alive and more exciting, is a really useful memento mori, is a very useful talisman to kind of follow yourself, I mean, to support yourself with.
Yeah, because when I created High Performance, I created 2 podcasts at that time. One was High Performance and the other was called One Last Thing Before I Go.
Was it? And that didn't do well.
Well, it was conversations with terminally ill people. And it was basically, what do you now know after your diagnosis that you wish we all knew? And I just couldn't really cope with the conversations. I did 3 of them and just found it too hard to be in that world too much. We're talking about going into and you do it a lot. I was in a hospice talking to someone about their kids and their life
regrets
and
of the dying,
their missed dreams and things. And I just couldn't cope with that conversation. But I am fascinated by it. I do think we would, I look at the wars going on in the world now and I think, are you all freaking stupid? Religion is something that we've created as human beings. Countries are things that we've created as human beings. 99% of the things we fall out about, we've created as human beings. The truth is, we're all like brothers and sisters, like we're all as one. I don't get it. I find it really confusing that we've managed to create so many reasons to divide ourselves when we should be creating so many reasons to unite ourselves. And I find that really sad, because it is actually within our power to just love each other unconditionally, regardless of gender, race, nationality, upbringing, status, religion. Doesn't matter.
No. And you're so right. And there's so much more that we share.
Yeah, absolutely.
Than divides us.
Yeah.
But thinking about your challenges, having kind of researched you, the other challenge I was wondering about was, given that your grandmother died by suicide.
Yes.
And I don't know if you know about epigenetics, how that what isn't processed in one generation, a loss or trauma isn't processed in one generation, can pass down to the next generation until someone's prepared to feel the pain.
Oh, wow.
But when you were talking, I was wondering, maybe unconsciously, if part of your influence was from that and your interest in mental health and death.
I think I probably, now you say it, I think you're right. I don't think it's something that I consciously thought.
Tell me the story about your grandmother. How old was your dad?
So my dad would have been, this was the late 90s, 97. So I was doing my A-levels at the time. And my grandma was the carer of my granddad, who'd had a farming accident when he was a lot younger and was paraplegic.
Wow. So that's a huge family loss. That must influence your dad.
Definitely. And, my dad's amazing. And I think certainly comes from a generation where you don't talk about those things as much, but we actually do now. And you can see he cries quick because I think it just bubbles just beneath the surface for him.
It's always there.
It's always there, absolutely. In some ways, it's the greatest thing that ever happened, my granddad breaking his back, because my dad was living away and came back to run the family farm in his late 20s, which in those days was old to not be married and have children. We're talking here about the 1960s, right? And he was single, and my member of his family, my grandma, said, there's a lady down the road who's single, why don't you go and take her for a drink? So my mum and dad met only because my granddad had his farming accident. Now, I think that is magic in so many ways.
That is magic.
Because stuff happens that we say,
serendipity.
Absolutely. I love this thought that there's not good things and bad things in life. There's just things. It just is. I'm all fatty.
And there's luck and good choices, right?
Absolutely.
He said, yes, I'll go and meet you.
Yeah, Liz, my mum. And so Rex and Liz got together on that day, and without that, I'm not born. So the most tragic thing that can affect a family created an entire family. We wouldn't be sitting here now. That's the madness, isn't it? We would not be sitting having this conversation if in the 1960s my granddad hadn't broken his back. And then you can trace it right back to if he hadn't gone and bought a new top hat and tails for a wedding that he was going to, which got caught in the potato picking machine. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, if he hadn't been if someone hadn't proposed to somebody else who you and I will never meet and never know, 50 years ago, you and I aren't sitting here. Crazy.
Those sliding doors.
Yes,
those moments.
Yeah. What was your question?
So my question was, you're interested in your mortality and from what you said, what we know is resilience building after terrible things happen is the meaning we make of them.
Yeah.
So I interviewed a family for my book, Every Family Has a Story, and the 97-year-old was a survivor of the Holocaust. And what she said to her children was, the reason I survived the Holocaust was that I would meet Isaac and love him and have you children, and that is the meaning I make of it. And yours is a version of that, is that it's love that in the end enables us to survive, to thrive. And the meaning we make of terrible things means that we don't sit in the despair and the kind of stay broken by them.
And I wonder, now that we're talking, and I sort of think about this now for the first time, I wonder whether my obsession with putting the family first and always going home, being there for the school run, I wonder whether that comes from seeing that I can... So just to sort of complete the story for your listeners, I guess, when my granddad died, it broke my grandma's heart. She just simply couldn't cope without him.
Because she
become
cared
her
for
reason
him.
for being. Yeah, you know, she was his.
He was her life.
Yeah, and so she then took her own life, and we were sitting having dinner one evening. My dad hadn't come home from work. It was long before, well, not long before, but it was before mobile phones, or certainly before they were commonplace.
Yeah.
And he'd got a call from his brother at work to say Mum's gone missing. They'd gone to the house and seen various things that had made them think there's a problem here. And eventually she was found just down the road from our house, and she was dead.
How had she killed herself?
She drowned in a ditch at the end of her road, which is...
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and she was always scared of water and couldn't swim, and it's horrible. Yeah, horrible.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, awful. And I think that moment, because actually, as much as I'd say life was unremarkable, life was also great. Like, there was no family tragedy. There was no sort of thing that bound us together beyond just being a family and being in love, and then suddenly this moment happens. And it does make you all a lot closer. You know, both sides of me and my cousins. We're a very small family. It's just my dad and his brother. I've only got 2 cousins. They've only got 3 cousins, me, my brother and sister. That brought us all really closely together.
Which isn't always the case by any means. Sometimes it pulls families
apart. But it tightened our bond for sure. And in that moment, I've realised, like, this can end so bloody quick. And what you think is stable and real, it suddenly isn't real. You can have a grandparent that is so sad they want to take their own life and you not know it. That's a big lesson for a teenager, I think.
That's a huge lesson for a teenager. And watching your dad, how did he manage that? Yeah,
I think on reflection, you know, because I actually think that this is much more impactful for me now at 45 than it was.
Trauma takes a long time to come to the surface. Right?
Yeah, I think when I was a teenager, I certainly accepted things more readily, but also kind of people lose their grandparents, right?
Wasn't a tragedy for you. It was a tragedy that it was suicide, but she was your grandmother. It wasn't a death out of time. She'd had a long life.
And she was young. She was only in her 60s.
It's my age.
Right, there you go. She would have been 67. So
it's young to me.
It's young.
But not to a teenager.
But I don't think it felt young to a teenager. And so therefore it didn't feel especially tragic. But it's only now that, like, the emotion for me is right there. It brings you to tears. And just going past that house, like, now, makes you go... And it's
in your body, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely in my body, yeah. But only...
And it's like the sadness it's been sitting there for decades.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it'll ever go. And it's actually more sad now. Because I've got kids, so I see the grandparent relationship, like, it's more sad than it's ever been, actually, strangely. Yeah.
I think that's really poignant, isn't it? That when very significant things happen, the trauma of it can actually numb us, and it can take decades, but also not just decades, but the having roots and stability allows you to experience feelings that probably feel too scary when you're very young.
Yeah, and I think actually the strength of relationship I have with my kids and my wife and my mum and dad and my brother and sister, I think that makes it harder, actually. If relationships came and went easily for me, if I didn't know what true connection was, what love really was, I could just bat this off and say, oh yeah, something happened a few years ago, but it's no big deal for me. I think when you have really strong relationships, it does impact me more. Absolutely it does. And so I think that sort of hand grenade, if you like, into our, up until that point, stable, happy life, totally informs the decisions I make, actually, now that I think about it. And you asked how my dad coped. Awful for the first little while, but again, I think he probably insulated us from, actually. I don't have a memory of him crying, breaking down. I just remember a sad, really sad person. Quiet.
Very quiet. Because there's no way he wouldn't think about it.
No. Probably every day.
Could be.
It's his mum.
So am I being oversimplistic if I would link your ambition and kind of seizing life by the scruff of the neck and making the most of it, like squeezing the life out of every day, to that pivotal?
No, I don't think that's oversimplistic at all. I think it's probably totally accurate. I also love it.
Well, that's
Like-
I think that's so where you love most, you hate most, where you want something most, you feel most. So you get a lot of passion and pleasure because you've given this hunger for life, I think it is, a lot of capacity in your heart.
Yeah, it's really lovely. And I tell you who I have I don't see him much, but I have a really close relationship with my cousin Simon, who's same age as me.
So like a brother.
He lives in Austin in Texas. So I see him, I saw him a couple of months ago for the first time in a few years. We meet at a family wedding but interestingly, we used to go on holiday to my grandma's house together over the summer, me and him. We used to make they were farmers, so we used to make our own little farm, and we'd be a good week or a couple of weeks every summer.
Helping with baling or helping with the
all of that,
cows.
yeah. We used to go and help with the harvest. We'd go to work with my granddad. They'd also take us for days out. My grandma would take us swimming. We'd play croquet in the garden on their lawn.
Idyllic.
It was idyllic. And I really think that the closeness that we share comes from the fact that we shared something that was
Those
snatched away.
Yeah.
And actually, interestingly, when she died, she left a note for everyone. And for Simon, and I know he won't mind me sharing this, at that time, he was pretty quiet. Wisbech is a quiet farming town in rural England, right? And he was really embedded in that. There wasn't no one would have said, wow, I can't wait to see what happens when Simon leaves Wisbech. Suddenly, and she wrote in the letter, I want Simon to go and do amazing things, see the world. I'm
so she
paraphrasing.
made a wish for all of you.
Yeah. For most of us, she wrote, I love you. And for him, she wrote something else. And then I saw him in Austin only a few months ago. I was out there for work, and he's out there with his 4 kids and his wife. Amazing, incredible life. He's a research scientist at the University of Texas now in Austin. And we both agreed that the reason why he now does what he does is because of the message in that letter. So it's a real sadness of what Ina did, what Grandma did, of course. But I think I can probably sit here now with you and say my love of life, my embracing every moment, my exploration, my memento mori, my amor fati, all comes from that. And I think his incredible life in Austin, pursuing his dreams and working as he does at the university, again, he would agree, I'm sure, would come from that. So it's the saddest thing you can ever go through. But I love the thought, and if she was here, I'd love to tell her, look what I know it came out of a place of sadness and it was traumatic for everyone, but look at what it also did. Look at the positive impact that people have managed to create from that horrendous situation. I don't think it's bad to say that, because what's the point otherwise? No,
it's very meaningful to say it. And I'm sure from kind of optimism and positive psychology, there's a strand around trauma called post-traumatic growth. Do you know about that?
I do, yeah.
Stephen Joseph and other big psychologists who talk about it never diminishes the level of the loss or the terribleness of it or the devastation caused by it, but also that the imprint of it changes you, and that change changes your perception about what matters in life. It changes about what you can survive that you think you can't survive, and that people experience as growth.
It's so lovely. I mean, sometimes I just have a really good cry about the whole thing and feel stronger for it afterwards, which I think is pretty healthy
and tender.
Yeah.
And that sort of crying, I guess, is so different from being out there, being on, leading, challenging.
Yep.
But I also know that you've had difficulty with social media. You've had low points in your life. How have you managed them?
Well, it's obviously a Therapy Works podcast, right?
Yeah.
Can I just say therapy does work?
Good. I'm glad you have the affirmation.
Yeah. So I had a period when I first came to London to work on kids' TV. So
you were 21?
Yeah, but early 20s, 21, 22. So after my grandma died, I actually failed my A-levels that year. I got an E and N and a U, had to go back to school to redo them and to spend another whole year doing my A-levels. But again, I can only embrace challenges in life, because it was the day that I went back to redo my A-levels that there was a letter from a local TV company asking for students studying politics to go and help out on a TV channel. And obviously I was not at university, I wasn't having a gap year, I was back at school, and I couldn't wait to go and embrace this opportunity, because I felt it's embarrassing walking into a classroom with kids a year below you, and they will turn around and think,
you feel ashamed, don't you?
why is he, that was the key, he's a year older than us, why is he in our class?
No.
And you
It's
sort of
almost like there's an
skulk in.
invisible D for dance on your
Mate,
head, isn't it? It's
So
awful.
true. You go here, you slink in at the back, you get in as late as possible, you sit down quietly, leave as quick as you can.
So shameful.
Waiting for the first person to go, why are you back at school? And you're going to be like, because I'm shit at school. But that led to my opportunity in telly, which led to working at a TV company in Norwich, didn't go to university, got a job on Children's BBC, which led to all of the opportunities that came since. So, there's another really clear example there of a challenge leading to a triumph, and this idea, it wasn't as traumatic as other things, but certainly
a failure. I mean, you could have, the story you could have said to yourself about yourself is, I'm an idiot, I'm stupid, I can't do stuff. You could have not dared to go to Anglia TV. You could have just said, I'm going to do something that isn't. I think one of the big things that we don't recognise after failure, or that kind of low self-esteem, is we keep ourselves so below the waterline that we do things because we don't want to be seen to fail, so you'd rather do nothing.
Yes.
And which means you tread water. It doesn't mean that you actually fail, but I didn't revise for my exams because I didn't actually want to fail having tried, so it's easier not to try.
Really interesting. So I don't know where the mindset came from of, right, I better dust myself down and go again, but I guess I did do that.
Your parents?
Well, yes, it would be, yeah, it would be. And it was at the school, and my mum was a teacher, actually. So it was hard for her as well, actually, pretty embarrassing, I think, for her that her son had to go back to school. And then I ended up getting a job on Children's BBC. And it was when I first moved to London that I had the only episode in my life where my mental health has really been challenged. And still to this day, I can't explain why it happened. I think I basically felt overwhelmed leaving home, moving to London, getting a flat, getting a job on kids' television.
It's lonely, no?
It would have been lonely, yeah, absolutely. I was having to kind of make my way in London in my early 20s, yeah. But I think society tricks us into thinking, well, you can't have a mental health episode at that point because you just landed a dream job on kids' telly that millions of people send in their show reels and CVs every year to London. You've got it, so why are you struggling? I think that made it kind of harder in some ways, but it manifested itself for me in intrusive thoughts and this fear that basically I was a madman and something awful was going to happen. And in those days, so frightening because obviously you believe it.
So there was like this third voice in your head that was telling you terrible things.
Yeah, and you don't deal with it immediately.
Threatening you internally.
Yeah, and men, I think, especially don't confront these things, which is why they lose years of their life to this. So certainly probably for a year, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't really eating. It was really challenging.
And you didn't tell a soul?
No. And then eventually I thought, right, so I need to do something. But it was hard in those days to access therapy and help and stuff. And eventually I saw an advert in the back of the Daily Mirror for an 0898 number for a counsellor. Well, it was like a dating site.
Like,
do you remember those old dating phone numbers?
Yeah,
those porn hotlines people used to ring. It was all like premium rate. So it was expensive, and it was his voice going, in a moment you're going to be connected to a therapist. Hold the line to speak to a yeah. And actually this guy answered.
Which is good it was a guy.
It was actually, in a really lovely calming voice, as you do.
Yeah.
And I said, look, I'm just worried I'm going to do something mad. I've just got this feeling. I keep having these thoughts. And he said to me, if this was real, you wouldn't be ringing me worrying about it. That's the first thing you need to understand. The second thing you need to understand is your brain playing a trick? And you need to not believe the trick. And I was then like, well, can I ring you back? And he said, well, this is the way this number works is you get put through to anyone. This would be the early days of like BetterHelp now.
But it's like Samaritans in a way.
Exactly. He said, you should go see someone. I did. I went to see this amazing woman called Ruth who didn't live far away from here, actually. And I went in, told her everything, cried a lot. She got me drawing pictures, and some sessions were just sitting there holding a pillow and crying for an hour. It was a really difficult time, without doubt, without question. But she helped me hugely and said to me, the more you fight these thoughts, the more credence you're giving them. You're almost telling them that they're real because you're fighting against them.
Yeah.
How about you accept that they're there, but they're not real? And as soon as she did that, immediately the starts to lift, like straight away, this feeling starts to lift. And then another real breakthrough was Harriet, who's my wife, was my girlfriend at the time. And I told her, I don't even want to vocalise what you're thinking, but it was like, you're thinking horrendous things. And I'm sure you've had many people in therapy with you that come and say, I fear that I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. And
actually, against the first guy that you spoke to, the second thing you said was useful, but actually the first one, research shows that someone who says they feel suicidal or that they have intrusive thoughts, it doesn't mean that they're not going to commit suicide. It means that they could.
Yeah.
So that you have to take them seriously.
Right. Well, I then told Harriet, my girlfriend at the time, and said, I'm really worried I'm going to just do mad things. And she just went, you? The nicest person I've ever met? Come on. That's ridiculous. It's bedtime anyway, let's go upstairs and go. And within 5 minutes, she was fast asleep. And that was really great for me because I was like, this person, I've just told her these awful feelings I'm having, and she's then happy just to lay next to me and go to sleep. How amazing is that? And then the final thing, which again was so helpful, was I had a good friend of mine, a guy called Harvey, and he asked to meet me. I said, yeah, of course. And he worked in telly as well. We were good friends from Norwich from a long time ago. Met in a pub. I said, how are you? And he goes, I'm not good. I said, why? And he said, I'm having all these awful thoughts. I'm going to do something horrible. I was like, mate, you won't believe it. And we went through exactly the same thing, exactly the same time. I said, go and see this lady called Ruth. And he went and saw her. And what he, like me today, we're still great mates, both parents, both husbands, like still working broadcasting. He's actually in America now. And the reason why I really like telling this story, because I know that there are people that when they're in the place that I was in then, they do believe it and they do think it's all over for them. Men particularly don't talk, don't share.
Much higher rates of suicide.
And I see all these reports now saying, men are more likely to seek therapy than ever before. Men are more likely to speak than ever before. And I discount that and say men are more likely to kill themselves than ever before. Like, we can't think we're winning this battle. So anytime I can have a conversation like this, I really want to have this conversation, and I want to have it as honestly and openly as possible, because like, I am honestly so happy. Life feels so great. See.
It's a lovely thing.
And I want people to know that I was in a place where they might be now, and to realise
total
that
darkness.
It passes. Total darkness.
For
it's
a
exactly
year.
The phrase. Longer. In total, maybe 2 or 3 years.
Seriously?
Because
That's
it takes
a
time
really
to come
long
out.
time. Yeah.
And then you get these fears where one of you feel better and you're recovered, then suddenly one of the thoughts will return, and then you think, oh, here I go again. I can't go back there again.
So scared of going back there is haunting.
Exactly. And the way I describe it is you go from having those thoughts all the time and they're all consuming, and then you do the work and they melt away. Then they return, and it might be early on, like it kills a month of your life with fearing that they're going to, and then they melt away.
And killing is the operative word.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it might be only a couple of weeks, then a week, then a day, then an hour, then a minute, and then a second. And then eventually, when you don't even give them more than a second's response, they do just go. I sit now 20 years on, having not had a recurrence at any point. And I also like the fact that I feel so much stronger for having had that and having been through therapy. And I know really that, you asked how would I deal with everything falling apart. I promise you now, I could lose my job, my house, my life, and it wouldn't be as bad as that period. Yeah.
My God, that says something that was that bad that it's worse than losing your house, your job. Yeah,
because you're losing your mind, or you feel like
you lose yourself.
You feel like you're losing everything. Yeah,
it's like you've died inside.
Yeah, for sure.
I really sort of really hit me in how long it was, but also, I mean, I think your message was that while you stayed silent, it got darker and darker, and the thoughts got more intense, and there was more killing inside. But the moment you rang that 089 number and you heard a voice, and he wasn't horrified. His reaction to you was one of warmth, I guess.
Yeah, totally.
So because I imagine while you were silent and in the madness, it's a sort of self-perpetuating where you think nobody could love me. If anybody knew that I was like this, I would be totally rejected.
Yeah.
So then seeing Ruth and her saying, like, befriend the thoughts, don't fight them, because you give them more power. Like being mindful, like be aware of them, see them. But the game changer was Harriet, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I will forever be grateful for that, for someone to love you that unconditionally.
And that I love that she went straight to sleep.
Yeah. That was the best thing she could have done.
Yeah.
If she'd have sort of sat up
and had a
away.
drama queen moment.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Are you really like, oh, I'm not sure. Let me just have one night away from you and just gather my thoughts. That would have done me, I think. The fact that she just went, as if it's you, come on, let's go to bed. Oh, dream. Amazing. Well done, her. Thank you.
Because she loved you, trusting you.
Totally trusted me, yeah.
And saw you as you didn't see yourself.
Yes, yeah. But I think the important thing...
But it came back and forth. I mean, I think what's important is that it's not like a 4-step program, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you switch.
Absolutely not. No, it doesn't turn on and off. But it doesn't turn off, but it does turn on. And I think that's I think anyway, and that's, yes, I think, important for people, because it's easy to listen to that last 10 minutes of this and go, he must have had some weird thoughts growing up. He must have been a bit of I was totally stable. I wasn't spectacular, but I was stable. I just got on with life. Nothing fazed me, nothing bothered me. Fail my A-levels, no problem. Fired from McDonald's, no problem. Go to London, work on Kids Telly, no problem. And then in an instant, sideswipe, bang, like, here it comes.
Thrown into a completely different world internally. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think people need to realise that, because I think that they assume that if they have gone from 0 to 100 like I did, that they really must be mad, because surely someone like me must have always had these issues and able to resolve them. There was nothing. And I think it's important to say that, so that people don't think, if they don't have any issues now, it doesn't mean you're never going to have them, right? But also, please believe that you can feel you're totally stable. You can go to a place where it's total darkness, but also you come out the other side and you come out stronger.
And I think that is really helpful, that kind of image that we all have mental health, and we can move on a spectrum of mental health from being healthy to being really very ill in a very dark place in a nanosecond. Sure. I mean, a third of suicides are unexpected and unexplained. Yeah. But also that the sort of tropes of assumptions that a difficult child... I mean, the research is if you have a mental health diagnosable problem as a young child or as a teenager, you're more likely to develop as an adult. But also, if you're a healthy child and a teenager, does not mean that you're immune.
I've loved talking to you.
Okay, I like you talking to me too. What else do we need to know about you? Because it feels like you're really letting yourself kind of celebrate and enjoy the life that you have. Yeah. Whilst recognising that you're imperfect, that you've had that very fragile time, that you could die tomorrow, as we could all die tomorrow. And for people struggling, what would be your message to them?
I think my message to people who listen to this and they're struggling, they're going through a hard time, there's the age-old thing of make sure you speak to someone. And I think that is brilliant advice. I think we live in a dangerous society where society likes to promote the self-made success story. I don't believe there is such a thing. There is no such thing as a self-made man or a self-made woman, right? What does that mean? Even the country in which we're born, we're lucky. You know, I could want to be the greatest entrepreneur of all time if I'm born in a war-torn third world country. Well, it's not going to happen. So just the country I'm born in, the fact I'm born to loving parents, the fact that I haven't had a serious illness up to the age of 45, none of those things I'm in control of. All of those things are luck. Right, so I can't sit here and go, look what I've achieved. I've achieved everything through the support and guidance of other people. And I think that it's dangerous to think that we can deal with this, that we can achieve great things on our own. And the same is true of struggle. You can't get through this stuff on your own. It's a lie to think that your brain, which is tricking you, is also the same brain that can unpick this and solve the problems. It's not true. Your brain is, or my brain anyway, was so busy believing the lie that there was no space left for it to solve the problem. I had to have someone from the outside do that work for me and help me to do that work.
Give you a different lens.
Yeah. And I think that I would just say to someone that you do need someone to work with you. And I think the other thing that I'm really passionate about is this sense that people with a mental health challenge are weak, right? People who have mental health challenges are the strongest people going. The person who loves a roller coaster isn't strong because they love a roller coaster and get on the roller coaster. The strong person is the person who hates the roller coaster, but they still get on it because they know that they want to please their kids or they want to challenge themselves, whatever it is. They're the person that needs the strength. The person who's not worried doesn't need the strength.
Because they're not scared.
Exactly. You know, I think that fear and doubt and worry and panic and anxiety, I feel it sits in the same place in my body as the strength. So when it appears, the strength is right there, and I need to focus on that part and remember that I'm strong, I think.
What's that? So is there an image that you have that when you feel fear and like, oh,
Yeah.
and then next to it, is there a kind of a weightlifter?
It's like a chest, I think.
It's
And
like a chest,
the
okay.
chest opens up and there's the doubt. And I keep my power in the same place. So when it opens, the power is also there.
And so they befriend each other.
Yeah. And I don't want people to believe this myth that if you've got a mental health challenge, you're a weak person. People with mental health challenges are the strongest people I know.
Yes.
Because they still get up, they still
get
move
up
forwards,
every
they still cope, they still parent, they still befriend people, they still go to do their jobs. And you need help, and you need to seek that help. But again, to pick up the phone, and in my case, to call that a high rate number or whatever it was, and if someone's listening to this, to pick up the phone to a therapist or even just tell their partner, that's the strongest thing you can do.
Yeah.
There's no strength in silence.
And people need people. We need people when we're
100%.
happy. We need people when we're suffering.
Absolutely.
We always
Yeah.
need
Just
people.
even having a conversation like this emboldens you and
It does.
gives you another little layer
I
on
can
your
see your lights
coat
on.
of armour. Yeah, it's lovely. It's nice. This is what life's about, I think.
So do you have another dream that you're dreaming?
I think I do dream of being able to be like my friend Dan and accept floating for a bit. I haven't got there yet, but I would like to just be...
Not to be so driven.
Yeah. The balance is the hardest thing for me, yeah. Because I can get the balance right where I work really hard, do all the work for the business, and also parent and be a strong husband and stuff. But there's the thing in the middle that is not serviced, and that's me. And I think that's probably the one thing I don't do enough is look after the person in the middle. And I'd like to find space for that.
That's really interesting. It's almost like you're kind of seeing yourself as energy that gets kind of pushed to the family, energy with time, pushed to the business. But the heart of you, the core of you, your relationship with yourself. So it's very performative, like meeting their needs, being a good dad, being a good husband, doing all the businesses. But you in relation to you, it barely exists. Because that isn't how you come across, because you seem so present.
I think I get a lot of my thrill, though, my personal thrill from the businesses and my personal joy from being with the children and being with Harriet. And I certainly have little things I do, like mowing the lawn, or I'm the king of a daytime nap. I absolutely love a 20-minute nap in the middle of the day. I think you can change the world with a daytime nap. But I think what I would love is more time for myself.
So in some way, you have to... The piece of work for you is looking at what is the underpinning motivation that drives, I guess, the businesses more than home, that you want to dial down.
Yeah. And I think the answer for me is that I'll always need to be having... I just know I will need to be having impact. Like, it thrills me to make an impact in the world, to improve other people's lives, just like the charitable work. The High Performance Foundation's new, but before that I worked for Young Lives versus Cancer for 5 years. I've been the chair of a charity called the Community Sport Foundation in Norwich for the last 6 years, and before that I was a trustee. And I know that I will always want to have impact. I love it when high performance gets big download numbers. I always loved the viewing figures on the telly, and I think that's okay. I think the answer for me is to build a team who can drive that impact, allowing me to take my foot off the gas a little bit. I couldn't just switch it all off and go and read books on a Greek island for 12 months of the year. That wouldn't fulfill.
Because if I was your therapist,
which you are now,
which I am in this moment, my question would be is that the numbers, it gives you your pharmacological dose of dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. It's a hit, and that is addictive. And so kind of in some way, and that we're habit-forming beings, and so the more hits you get, the more, in that idea of the hedonic principle, the more hits you get, the more hits you need. So the work would be looking at what is it in me that is still looking for that, when if I really want to
I'm noting this down.
You can listen to the pod. If I'm serious about wanting to have more balance, I need to be serious about discovering in myself what my pleasure centres are really. And if that means slowing down, I need to address being so hooked to the stats.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the other thing that I love. Like, I'm nowhere near perfect, right? And I like the fact that I can take something away from this conversation. And it is a really important question to ask myself. I don't know why I love those numbers so much, but that is something that after this I'll be asking myself that question. And
Are you competing with your sibs?
not really, no. I think I'm just competing with myself.
So that's a competition you can never win.
Yes. Or always win, depending on which side you come down. Yes. Yeah, but I also think it's the part of the dynamo. But it's great for me to think like that. I mean, one of the reasons why I was happy.
But also, can I just be a therapist again?
Yeah.
If you're loving it, don't fix what's not broken.
No, and I think I am good at fixing things that are broken, actually, because I'm no longer working as a sports presenter. I stopped last September.
Oh, did you? That was a big step.
Yeah, it just didn't. It wasn't fulfilling me. It didn't. Where I was working, which BT at the time changed. The new look of it didn't feel right in any way to me. But
so you weren't learning.
But I was not learning. But I was also seeing people in their 60s and 70s who couldn't let go of the job. They were still broadcasting, and they were bitter because there was younger people coming through, and they were frustrated
The
because
sexy young.
when they stopped doing it, nobody noticed. And like I was thinking only the other day, the broadcasters the broadcaster that I revered growing up was Des Lynam.
Yeah.
Des Lynam's no longer doing that job, and people aren't saying every single day, "I wish Des Lynam was doing this job," because it doesn't matter to people. And I think we can't wrap ourselves up in a world where that really matters, because we will end up bitter and angry and frustrated. And I love the idea of reinvention, and I was happy to do that, happy to walk away.
You like change?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. I get bored easily.
Which is unusual. A lot of people fear change.
Yeah, no, I like it. And I think that's why I love high performance, because it can be a podcast one week, then it can be a show that's on YouTube, then it can be a foundation, then it can be some coaching courses, then it can be a book. It's high performance can be as big as my imagination and my work ethic allows it to become.
Which is pretty damn big.
Yeah, it can be bigger though.
Even bigger.
Yeah.
So the paradox that I'm left with you is I can really hear the purity of your energy of high performance. Like, you can really manifest it to be endlessly growing and adapting and being a course or a show or a podcast. And maybe Harriet is saying to you, Jake, just...
Yeah. Yeah, she is. Yeah.
And in a way, there's a thing called whisper. You're kind of wanting to whisper into your own ear. I want to be creative. I want to have drive. And maybe I should have the capacity to say no sometimes to a great idea. Yeah,
you've got me down. That's why you're so good at your job. I've loved that. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you so much. Do you want to say where people can find you and about the podcast?
Of course.
And
if they are listening to this, so they know about
podcasts.
Already, just search for the High Performance Podcast. They can also watch it on YouTube. And I guess my Instagram, which is just Jake Humphrey. They can see all the stuff that I'm up to there.
Thank you very much, Jake. That was a wonderful conversation.
Thank you very much. I loved it.
Hello, Sophie and Emily. Our first mother-daughter segment for season 6, and we're talking about the wonderful Jake Humphrey. And I wondered what your initial thoughts were.
It seemed such a rich conversation, wasn't it? You could sort of hear how actually his own story evolved as you were exploring it together, which is always a lovely thing to listen to, and sort of showed how generous he was, wasn't it? It's sort of lovely to be a part of that. It's like being in a real therapy session.
And it did feel like he sort of realised things about his grandmother's suicide that he hadn't fully joined the dots. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I was left thinking about, not necessarily the most standout part of the conversation, but it was the bit that left me going, was when you asked the question about how would it be if he lost everything. And he gave a really honest answer, even though you tried to be like, I think you'd be fine. He was like, I'm not sure I would, actually. And I was sort of mulling on, and Mum, maybe you have more to say about this because it's more in your actual life experience, but I was thinking about success and specialness, feeling singled out in the way that sort of being well known or being on a public platform like television does. And I was thinking, well, of course it would be devastating for anyone in that scenario to lose everything. It'd be devastating for any of us to lose everything that we'd worked so hard for. And then I was thinking, is it then just, it's more about, is that all that there is, if you see what I mean? So that then the bouncing back from that kind of experience is really, really difficult. Whereas a bit like in Jake's story, there's a whole life outside of his public life. As much as he loves his work and his public life, he also has this relationships outside his life, his wife, his kids, his family. So it's not that losing everything wouldn't be devastating. It's more like, what have you got? Is it the image I had was like of a hollow piece of architecture, or is there like a foundation on which you've built something? It'd always be devastating, but what have you got left if it collapses to help you find another way and to grow in that slightly post-traumatic growth kind of framework? It's very wordy.
Yes, I mean,
Sorry.
I think that's really interesting. As you're speaking, I remember Alain de Botton saying in our conversation that you want evidence of success of child rearing is that your children don't need attention, that they don't need to be well known. And then I was thinking of a sort of framework of when you are in a public place, that you have your public place, which is your persona, like as a broadcaster. And then you have your public private place, which is where you kind of go on Instagram and you tell people a bit about your life, but it's still public. And then you have your very private place, which is just that you know and your family know, that's really only very, very personal. And I think what you're kind of showing is that if your very private place is actually a bit fragile and a bit small, and you put all your energy into the upward ones, then you would feel broken. And I actually don't think he is like that. And not, I mean, we try in these conversations not to make it personal, but I think for people listening, if they're thinking about themselves, if their private foundations are quite resilient and have kind of basic trust within themselves and with those around them, you can probably survive much more than you think you can.
And I think it's partly to do with talking about Jake, but also generally. I think he has a capacity to see the sort of positive in any situation. So even the most awful of situations, like his grandfather's accident, he was able to see the sort of long-term positive. And I think that's a real gift, to be able to kind of see the silver lining in things. And I think that really helps when you are faced with real hardship, like he has been in the past. As long as as the silver lining allows for the cloud as well, I guess.
Yes.
Like that I think that if you're only focusing on, well, it was really okay because XYZ then happened, it's sort of sometimes like it's almost like you're protesting too much. Like, it was good, really. Maybe because it's really difficult to feel the not okayness, which I know I've sort of a slightly tangential thing.
No, I think
from
that's
what you were
true.
saying.
But also research shows that being optimistic, people fare better. They wake up sunny. You do tend to have a better day, having a positive mindset, as much as it's annoying. And that is different to toxic positivity, I think.
Yes, it's one that I really start like. It's sort of when you were talking about resilience, this is what I was thinking about too, actually. Like the meaning we make from things, like you talked about that extraordinary story of the Holocaust survivor who was really living for her love, was it her and the children that they were going to have, and
Isaac.
and that sort of allowed her to make meaning of a situation that doesn't really
Unbearable.
have like an unbearable situation. I think that is very profound and incredibly moving. There's also something about it that I think I struggle with, because I think maybe it's to do with my own sense of like, oh, I'm not sure that I would be able to do that. That it feels a bit like, am I then failing if I'm not able to move on? If I don't feel like there's a meaning in this terrible thing, I just feel like it's a freaking terrible, terrible thing. And does that mean I'm somehow not doing terrible things as well as somebody else who's able to find meaning? And so I suppose that there's a bit about it that sort of feels like you also sort of maybe can't help always how you feel about a situation. So I don't know, there's a bit about it that I feel an innate like push against as well.
Yeah, I get that.
And there is a reality to the sort of random and often meaninglessness of terrible things in life.
Right.
That they didn't happen for a reason. There wasn't anything that can make sense of it. It's just bloody awful. And sometimes you, certainly at least at times, need to be allowed to feel that. And that's the bit of the toxic positivity bit, isn't it? Is where, like, if we're not allowed to just embrace the awfulness of something.
And stamp and rage.
Yeah, and just be like, there is no meaning, and life is random, and who gets the good deal and who gets the bad deal has nothing to do with
Yes.
your worth. And so being allowed that, right? It's the kind of threat of being told, oh, you have to find the silver lining.
It's a
So
wonder-
maybe it's more about. I think obviously it's amazing if you can find a silver lining, but I think maybe it's also about being able to accept how you feel about whatever it is that you feel.
And where this has taken me, there's a wonderful podcaster, and she's actually a theology professor at Duke University. She's called Katie Bowler, and she got stage 4 cancer. And so she started a whole campaign about not everything happens for a reason. So her thing is, I think her campaign is everything happens for a reason, because she got so fed up with people kind of putting their head to one side and saying, well, everything happens for a reason. And
Right, like you'll appreciate every day that you're alive, or like whatever it is people say, and you're like, nah, no, it's
No.
fucking unfair.
Yeah.
I also sort of wondered, like connected to you what said at the beginning, so that sort of thing of numbers and likes, and I guess sort of public validation in a way of like, ooh, that was interesting, or because Mum, you were sort of asking to him about what it was that was for him that he kind of liked about it. But I wondered if it was something you ever thought about in relation to you, because obviously you've chosen, and us sort of consequently, to have this kind of more public facing profile. And I think a lot of the motivation of that is to do with really, like with Jake, having a kind of message that you want people to know or to make things more accessible. But I wondered what you kind of thought about it in relation to yourself.
I think I've talked about this before. I have very kind of mixed feelings. So I have a sort of sense of shame of liking attention, of liking the attention, of being more sort of public facing. In quite old age, I started doing it, to be fair, age 60 or something. And I sort of feel I shouldn't. And then I also feel at exactly the same time, it kind of embrace it. Like, I'm 64, go for it. What have I got to lose? And I love what I do. And I do think it's, we get messages every day from people saying how meaningful the podcast is. And so that gives me meaning. So I think if it was just to boost my ego and very narcissistic, I would feel more ashamed. But I think as I'm talking, I sort of sound like I'm being defensive, and I don't know how to answer without sounding like an absolute idiot.
I think what you're saying is that, like Soph talks about, intention is important. And
but I also do like it. I have to admit that I like it.
Yes, but I don't think there's something wrong with liking it. I just think it's complicated.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this as well in relation to this podcast, and I was and thinking, because we have touched on it before, like, is there anything wrong in enjoying the attention or the affirmation? And I was thinking it's similar to what we were saying in the beginning, is if it's your only source of self-worth, then it's fragile and it's brittle as an experience. If you have, as you have, a very fulsome sense of self-worth outside of this space, it's like any of these coping strategies we have that maybe are meeting a childhood need, or are maybe meeting a past self that hasn't been sufficiently met, like Alan de Botton was suggesting. But unless it's actually doing harm in how we then live and relate in the richness of our own life, it's not a pathological thing. It's like any other coping strategy that meets us in a way that gives us pleasure, and it doesn't take away from the other ways that we are living. And the sort of shamey part isn't valid. The bit that I suppose that I kind of, this isn't related to you, it's the bit, I guess maybe it's a kind of, I was trying to locate it in myself, maybe like an ethical thing for me, is I think specialness is something that we have quite problematic, I think, in culture. Like the fact that somehow we all need to be special. And it's not
exceptionalism.
Okay. And exceptional, not okay to be like an average Joe, like somehow less.
Yeah, and so we were talking about this on the weekend, weren't we? So last weekend.
Yeah. And when I was thinking about it for this episode, but maybe you can remind me what we said about before, because I do remember talking about. I can't really remember what we said.
Do you remember? I talk in the car. You forgot it. So
the bit I was remembering now was that
I'm not special.
You're not memorable. You're totally forgettable.
Breaking my heart.
Right, let me get to my point first, then you can remind me what we said. That moment, I think if you have a public profile that is growing or is big, the way I would think about it, and I'd be interested to hear what you think about me saying this, is like, that's a moment of luck. like the sunshine has and the light has kind of picked you out in this moment, and it happens to be you, and you're being enjoyed and you're being appreciated, and that's a really wonderful experience, hopefully. But it has really nothing to do with your worth
Yes,
or
I
your
think it's-
specialness. And I believe that so deeply. And you're not more than anyone else who didn't get picked out by the sunlight or
No,
didn't
I
get the
totally
deal
agree.
of the cards. And equally, as everybody also knows, that's so evident in the point that you can also the next day be ripped to shreds. And you are
Crushed,
no
yeah.
less worthy after you've been shredded as you were before you were being applauded. And I guess that separation from, oh, you happen to be lifted up in this moment for a whole bunch of factors that will go into that.
A lot of which nothing to do with you.
Majority of which are nothing to do with you.
Yeah. Yes.
And it has nothing to do with your worth. It's just a lovely moment in the sun. If you and that should be delighted in it with that framework of understanding that this isn't because you're a more worthy person. That's my take.
Yeah, I like that. What
I
were you
agree.
talking
And
about in the car, Em?
What we're talking about in the car, suspense. Everyone's in a lot of suspense. So it's not very interesting, but it does relate to this, and it actually relates to something that you and Jake were talking about at the beginning when he was talking about his childhood, how that it was an ordinary childhood, and that in and of itself is extraordinary.
Yeah.
Yeah, that actually, I think that we kind of have a sort of vision of an alternate life that's somehow more exciting, that involves, I don't know, like helicopters or really fancy holidays or whatever it is
Unlived
that,
life.
yeah, like the sort of fantasy of what a sort of special inverted commas life is. And this is maybe just sounds a bit cliche, but I think what Soph and I were talking about in the car was the sort of the joy of an ordinary life, of like, you know, walking your kids home from school and bumping into your neighbour and
Buying an
having
ice cream.
buying an ice cream, like just really normal things. Now I sound like a sort of toxically positive person, but I know that I definitely like feel gratitude for those things, and that they're not extraordinary, but they feel very lucky too. Just those
Yeah.
things. I did have one more sort of thing that I wanted to just
Yeah.
talk
should we do
about
that?
briefly, which was really about shame. So that idea, you know, Jake's experience specifically of feeling like, oh my gosh, if anybody knew this about me, they would never, I would be unacceptable, I would be unlovable. And that deeply vulnerable experience of sort of peeling off your layers to somebody, what you think is like your most maggoty, disgusting bit that you hate in yourself, and somebody else looking at that and being like, oh, that's okay. Like, that's okay. I'm like, I'm okay with it. And that can be the most healing experience, like one of the most healing experiences there is. It's sort of really showing somebody your darkness and being loved
As they
with
are.
that.
Yeah.
With that in you, and it was such a beautiful description he gave of Harriet falling asleep.
That was so
All right.
horrible. How not a
That's
big
okay.
deal. For me, when I was, thinking of our notes, I thought about when I was thinking about that section of it and the power of having that conversation with his friend as well. The sort of the thing of sort of common humanity that is de-shaming of like, oh, you too, me too, and the power of kind of groups, therefore, that can be there because you realize that what you think is so dreadful in you see in someone else and see is no different to you, and they're still a worthy human being.
Totally. And I find that a lot with parenting, like the sort of things that you find difficult, or the fact that you kind of lost it at your children, and then somebody else is like, oh, well, you won't believe what I did. And that makes you feel less ashamed about,
Yeah.
losing
And
it.
I definitely work with clients who have had a history of addiction, for example, and when they go to AA or NA and they sort of share their like biggest oh God moment, I did this awful shamey thing, and someone tells me, I go, "Pah! That's the worst thing you've done. Let me tell you what I did." Who are sort of further along in the recovery road without carrying so much shame, and it is really healing, isn't it?
All right, my darlings. Well, thank you. I think it was a really lovely and sort of important conversation, a great conversation to start off Series 6. So thank you to Jake Humphrey. Thank you to both of you. And particularly thank you to everyone that listens to us. And as ever, do please share this with anybody that you think might find it helpful. And rate and review us so that people can find us. And until next week.